It's a great pleasure to be here today to introduce Michael Phillips. He is a principal and the president of Jamestown. New Tradition has had the privilege of working with and on behalf of Jamestown at the iconic One Times Square since 2015. Michael's vision and creative direction for Chelsea Market, Ponce Market, Buckhead Village, Industry City, and many other retail venues around the country has been a cornerstone of Jamestown's success. I'm so excited he gets to share his thoughts and visions surrounding the intersection of technology, advertising, and real estate with everybody in this room today. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome Michael Phillips.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. You're probably wondering why real estate in a conference for out of home. And maybe I'd start with a little bit of history on who we are. We are a 40-year-old company that has specialized in a variety of mixed use and office retail properties around the world. We're in about 7 countries in Europe, 5 countries in South America, and across the United States. One of our kind of basic tenets was to take real estate that is fairly commodity and make it non-commodity. And we spent a lot of time in the technology and media space creating relationships with tenants that help them attract and retain the best and brightest workforce. Creating that dialogue between the tenant, the employee, and the real estate has been something we've focused on for a long time. We've owned One Times Square for 25 years, and we really look at it as a key asset in our program around thinking globally and acting really locally, because it bridges both. So what you're seeing on the screen right now are a series of very analog buildings, and we wanted to show these to you because they're historic, they're not necessarily digitally relevant to what you're doing, but they all have digital spines. And they're speaking to a cohort of folks that are focused on this space. And so this is Industry City. It's 6 million square feet in Brooklyn, the largest privately owned piece of property on the waterfront today. It houses about 15,000 people and has about 35,000 people a weekend visiting it. So maybe advancing to, this is a project in Lisbon, which is the largest building in Portugal and has an innovation and design intersection around coding and media and graphics and advertising. And this is a project that's rolling out for us over the last 2 years. Advance. So the big discussion here is around One Times Square. For us, we own One Times Square for about 12, 13 years with long-term 10-year leases, individual contracts, signs that were either erected or designed by the brands. And as that started to come to an end, we really got focused on creating a digital interface that would allow us to program in short form, not necessarily long form, and take the punctuation moments of the year, with the end being New Year's Eve, with over 1 billion eyes on it and about 1 million people in person, and create a storytelling environment that allowed people to engage across both the physical out-of-home advertising space, but also in the reverb of digital and social media and the metaverse and our virtual platforms. So what I'm going to sort of share with you is sort of how we got there. When we erected the new stack of signs 200 feet tall, we created a series of moments that allowed us to show the world what a very high-res artist design with Latoile de France, 2 moments, both the American flag, which was a dimensional moving image, and then when the whales were coming up the New York coast, which was a big moment if you live in New York City, we did this stack, which was intended just to show people what it does. After that, we moved into space around brand positioning, which you guys have seen this morning, and a variety of different people who've used this takeover technology. One of the most sort of compelling things early for us was The is the waterfall gonna go? So this is very cool. What we were able to do is to take something that really had no commercial value, but had creative value and engage people around what it was doing. And so what this led to was a series of advertising, which you guys have all heard about. But one of the big things was our film, television, and music takeovers. Our partnership with Spotify on Fridays allowed us to put whatever the new music was on, and then what a lot of the talent did is then repost that. So you might have, 2 million people seeing it over the period that it's there, but then the repost with Taylor Swift with 234 million followers just expands that, and then her people reposting that. So as we sort of move down this path, how do we create the reverberation of the advertising in traditional channels, which we've talked about, and then the next is the metaverse, which you guys have all talked about. It's sort of a bit out of favor at the moment, but for us, it's about Web 3.0 and multi-channel distribution of content. And so we started with a virtual New Year's Eve. We actually control all 19 cameras that produce New Year's Eve. We've produced New Year's Eve for 25 years with the City of New York and Times Square Alliance. We created a makers program that anyone could go on our channels and create their own story of New Year's Eve with them as the star. In addition, we created a gamification program which had 3 games going. We had over 4 million people gaming on the end of the 1st of January, which extended the experience of New Year's Eve, which is traditionally a 6-hour period, to about 48 hours. And so as we start to test against this and collect data on how we can engage the customer, this became a really kind of key piece for us. One of the things I would say, this is the Decentraland MetaFest that we launched, which had a tokenization program with gaming, obviously, had music, had NFT art galleries, and drove its own new young consumer to Times Square. So in 2019, we had 150 million eyes directly on the event, real time. By 2021, we had 310 million eyes. And what happened was COVID. A lot of the world shut down. We went out for the first time and did media in 18 different countries, and we drove them to our virtual platforms as well as our live platforms. And so as a tool for your industry, you've known this for a long time, that Times Square is a really valuable tool, but also globally, it's the most iconic asset in the world, the only one that has an actual happening around New Year's, a ball dropping, that we are sort of the father of that globally. We have competition from Shanghai and Sydney and London and all these places, but what we did over the last 2 years is consolidate those eyes and that brand engagement. And what the metaverse does is allows people that either want to come to New York, think about this asset, think about the city, may never come, but can experience it in a way that's 3-dimensional as another distribution platform. So it's not the next, it's just part of the future. And so this was a big piece of how we've treated the building. And then what's next is the redevelopment of Times Square. So I said we've owned the building for 25 years. We've just embarked on a $500 million redevelopment of the building, which will probably be the most expensive per square foot redevelopment of a non-residential building in New York. Sherry White and Amy Say, who are on our team, is really I'd like to say I'm in charge, but we all work for Sherry ultimately, so downstream. But the idea of this is that we're taking the building, which has a huge value out of home, but for really almost 50 years, before that it had more activity, it's been an empty shell inside. It has signs wrapping the building, 21 floors of just empty floors, and we've reskinned the building, we're putting new elevators on the building, and we're doing a stack that starts at the top with a Times travel history experience, the new visitor center for New York City, which walks you through the history of the city. And then below that, a stack of brand experiences called Next Gen. And this slide is, forgive me if Pepsi's in the audience, your reps probably are, but this is a dream of how you can engage your brands in a test and iterate with a consumer in a gamified way that provides rewards and points that you can engage with the brand. It can be voting for new flavors or new drinks. In this instance of Starbucks, it's how do you engage with the environmental commitment and the social commitment of the brand. And so you're interested in talking to, from Tokyo to Hanoi, you have a foam bubble over your head and you're having a real-time engagement that has an augmented reality feature, and you take your points and you go out into the city and engage with the brand somewhere else. What is next-gen advertising? It's advertising plus augmented reality plus direct consumer engagement. It's really what we think is the future of advertising, but by the way, it's also the future of sort of all engagement. Whether, we started with our smartphones 11 years ago now, not that long, and now there's not anything that doesn't start with a Google search. So as you start to think about how people engage across a platform, these three components we think are essential. So next we sort of worked into what does it mean to take your smartphone or Oculus glasses or Google glasses and engage with the physical environment through an augmented reality. So in this slide, the idea that the Jolly Green Giant, which is a beloved historic brand reference, can climb up your building, can take an animate object that has no real value or it's monumentally protected, and you can engage it as a dynamic marketing tool and engagement tool. We piloted this technology in August of this year with something called Concrete Jungle. We partnered with Unity, which is one of the largest gamers, who brought us the animals, and we took on your smartphone and tablet the ability to stand in Times Square and watch all of these things unfold, and also take a selfie or engage with it or export that content to whomever you'd like. And so we think this has real utility, both obviously in Times Square and in any sort of physical asset that engages the public, but certainly in things that are completely innocuous, like Pier 76, that is just an empty shell. You may remember that some of the small courts for the US Open were held here. You can take this in a much more dynamic way through augmented reality and overlay a lot of different aspects to it that allow you to tell that story. So this is something called Shapeshifter, which we piloted, which is this idea that you take not just a flat ad for Dior, but you take the perfume and you spray it out into Times Square, or someone can program what scent they actually want to have delivered to them, or how it engages in a 3D sort of augmented way in the building and can move around the building. So the idea of this is really, how do we move the industry forward? How do we take what we do as a analog real estate company and leverage that in the digital space and make technology that's replicable across all assets? And so this project started about 6 months ago. It'll deliver in 2024. And as we sort of move down this path, we encourage everybody to come and tour. Whether this is interesting directly to your business or not, I think it's technology that unlocks ideas for you elsewhere, and to be on the cutting edge of what's happening it's important to be aware of it. And so our team is standing by. We obviously partnered with the Tradition, who were incredibly devoted to, great thought partners for us and execution partners. But as we move down this path, would love to get feedback from all of you about if you think we're on the right track or you have ideas that we've missed. It's a very collaborative process. And I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah, I think Michael's willing to take questions from the group. I'll start the first one. So obviously we are beyond excited about the transformation of One Times Square, and to bring it to market is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us in New Tradition. Can you talk about a couple of the other best-in-class operators that you work with and kind of the dynamic conversations that you're having with them?
Sure. I mean, I think we spend a lot of time in the technology and media space, so we're creating environments in partnership with tech companies. And we're paying attention to the data that they're getting from their workforce and from their consumers and from their ad platforms. So for us, it's a backdoor into thinking about how the world is evolving and how consumer behavior is evolving. And the other thing I would maybe add is that what's really interesting about this platform is that if you're a multi-brand company, like a media company that has film, television, fashion, a variety of things, this stack allows you to create engageable experiences that ladder up to your brand value as a company. And we're having several really dynamic conversations around that. Our goal is not to have it become just one, because I think the dynamism comes from this, of that it continues to evolve. So as we lease our experience floors, either half floors or full floors, they're going to be 1 to 3 year license agreements so that it continues to be fresh. We think that that's the promise that keeps 130 million people coming through Times Square continuing to be engaged with this tool. And I would say the other thing we spent a lot of time on is the education space, which is now evolving for young kids, that's around rewards and tokenomics as they study and do extracurriculars. We think, I'm sure many of you have kids in the audience, many of you have kids that are on roadblocks and are playing on a regular basis. We spend a lot of time paying attention to Generation Alpha. No one's really talking about them, but if you have a 10-year-old, that 10-year-old's in the workforce in 10 to 12 years. They're making job decisions and career decisions. So as this technology evolves, we think it's really important to meet those, definitely Gen X, but Gen Alpha as they come, on the grounds that they understand. And tokenomics and awards programs is really at the basis of this. So this customer integration piece that comes with this next gen brand experience, we think is kind of where all of this is going.
Thank you. Wonderful response to my question. I'm getting waved by the Ag Club not to open up to the larger group, so I'm going to wing another question and go off the cuff here. So what's really impressed me working with Jamestown over all these years is you've doubled down, whether it's good times or bad times. You've invested in New York and so many major cities throughout the country. And earlier today, Brian was talking about the overarching narrative, whether you turn on CNBC or read the Wall Street Journal or open Ad Age, about this recessionary environment that is coming. And here we are talking about a $500 million plus, renovation. Can you just, because confidence is important, can you just talk about your thought process? And you've grown one of the best, real estate investment trusts in the country, where your mindset is at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously it's pretty shitty times out there and it's getting worse, but that creates a lot of opportunity, right? And I think as we look at, when I look back on 2008, where any of my regrets really lie, it's not moving fast enough as we came out. And so the people that we think were visionaries and did an incredible job, like look at Hearst Tower, that was the first building to start in 2008. They did it despite the problem. JP Morgan's doing the same thing. So as we think about both the investments in digital, and this is not a small investment across our platform. We're talking about one business, one building, but we see this in our shopping centers. We see this in our office buildings. We've invested in tech around social apps and a variety of ways for people to engage. This is essential. As we watch how people consume, it's rapidly changing. And with COVID, we're seeing the fastest adoption of technology in our lifetime. And it really is leaving people behind. I don't know how many of you go to the airport and can't talk to a person at a desk anymore and have to go to a kiosk. All of that is just the beginning of what's to come. So for us, we're a 40-year-old company, and we have our foundations are in Germany, which is very long-dated investment. We think in multiples. We don't think in IRRs. So for us, this is really, we don't have another option but just to keep investing.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, right? Like when COVID hit, the markets dropped like an elevator, and New York and every major metropolitan city has risen back like stairs. And again, you turn on the news, you read, and you're just like, you read overarching narratives of the death of urbanization, which is crazy to me. And just to hear your thoughts and fellow thought leaders like Sherry about where this city is going and where almost every major metropolitan city is going, and it's in the right direction despite what we're reading and hearing about.
Yeah, New York is amazing. I live between London, New York, and San Francisco, and San Francisco and New York got pummeled, obviously. But if you spend time on the ground in both of these cities, they're dynamic, they're alive, and one of the things that I think I didn't say about our company is we fundamentally see ourselves as underdogs, and that we're a small company in the scheme of things, but we're agile. And I think when you see New York, all the new restaurants that have opened, all the retail that's reopened, and the vacancies that you went up Madison Avenue in late 2020 and half the street was vacant. It's all refilled because the brands got smart and retrenched and stepped out and came in for better economics. But now for the first time, we have small restaurants, chef-driven restaurants open that haven't opened in the city in over 10 years. All the chefs went to Brooklyn, and now they're in Philadelphia. Like, who goes to Philadelphia to open a restaurant if you could open it in New York? But you go there because it's actually affordable. And so now New York has shown up in that way, and I think you just never bet against the city.
Great, thank you. And thank you again for doing this today and presenting to everybody. So if you give Michael a round of applause, it'd be appreciated.
Thanks, everybody.